He said, had I not turned my head at 30 degrees, I would be dead right now. And you know why I turned my head? To look at the statistics on illegal immigration in this state.
Tomorrow, God forbid, if a popular leader in India there was an attempted assassination, which we have a rough history of, I'm sure you'll have the same machine that starts up saying, is it staged? Is it fake?
Is it good?
Is it good?
Lollapalooza, when it happened in Mahalakshmi Racecourse, it was jammed as hell.
Yeah.
And the Ambanis had a way better lineup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some level of corruption is understood that, okay, at that level, you're finally in a position where you can extract your pound of flesh.
Actual care for your country and not your bank account.
But also my thing is, how badly do you want to be in this thing that you'll take it 12 times?
Dog food products are like for human grade consumption, and human products are not fit to give dogs.
For me, it's hilarious that it's called like Rule 69. I just want to say that. It's so there had to be some intern that's messing around.
Are we like criminalizing fuckboys now?
Yeah.
Like welcome everyone to another episode of the Overcorrection. We've got Puru back in studio.
Yeah, it feels good to be back, man. I was like living the slow life in Goa for a while, so one day into Mumbai and it's already hectic. More traffic than I've been stuck in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and a lot has happened when you went, man. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, like 2 riots, 1 assassination attempt. Like, what kind of world are we living in?
Busy world. And the Trump assassination.
Yeah, that definitely one small head turn that changed probably history, I would argue. Like, we could have gone a very different path.
You know, the public reaction to this, Faye D'Souza made quite an interesting post about it. She pointed out how in the immediate aftermath, we seem to have lost a lot of humanity.
Yeah.
You know, everyone is talking about, is there an angle to this? Is there
was it a setup?
Was it a setup, basically? You know how, but someone has been shot. He's an old man. It just speaks to how degraded we have become on maybe just on an emotional and a moral level, where we can't just maybe take a breather and just be like, man, that just is sad.
Yeah.
And we have to start finding theories. But I saw this from Trump himself, I think, from either him or his party, where he said, had I not turned my head at 30 degrees, I would be dead right now. And you know why I turned my head? To look at the statistics on illegal immigration in this state. And then I was like, man, even you, like you were just shot at.
Yeah.
But yet somewhere it's just like, let's forget the fact that I was shot at. Let's spin this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. These guys are masters of spin. And I think the way he also speaks is like genuinely deplorable. I think at times, and I'm putting it mildly. But I think, you pretty much summed it up, dude. I thought seeing that and waking up, I think we woke up in the morning and we got the news, right? That they had taken an attempt. And I think for me, it was the same thing, the reactions, right? You saw people first denying it. Dude, leading newspapers got slammed for putting a headline saying Trump falls down at a convention. When they know that there were bullet shots heard.
Oh God! And I think the Times of India posted an article saying
Donald Trump's death.
Donald Trump's death.
Yeah. Great headline in the end, right? But whatever it was, that's like one of those one of those headlines to remember. But I think it goes to show how far into the polarized hole America has gone, right? And we've spoken about this on so many episodes. In fact, we've done a dedicated episode on, is India following in those footsteps? And we are, is what I was arguing then. And this is what that end game looks like, right? You have essentially people with so much hatred and well warranted as well, right? Because he genuinely says some horrendous things about people and is not suited, I think, to be a president, personally. But with that level of hate, you've lost humanity, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And people's humanity itself seems to be coming in the way of the rest of their humanity. Because I saw people saying, how can we express any sympathy for Donald Trump when there are children dying in Gaza for the last 9 months?
Yeah. This is something which is always going to be tough, I think, for people to reconcile, dealing with, say, the death of someone you hate. Right? I remember when I was in the US, there was a very famous conservative judge, Scalia, who died. I remember on campus there was like a ding dong the witch is dead party, because a lot of people hated him because he again said some horrible things about the LGBTQ community. But I guess that's just not a kind of politics that I've ever subscribed to. I think it's like not really human, and like you put that in stark contrast to say in the UK. I don't know if you've seen the footage recently of like Rishi Sunak lost, right? And now there's Keith Starmer, and they're like having a conversation together. And it's like, yeah, we're politicians, but we're also people.
I think, like, if you just took, like, say, India, UK, and US, UK is in the most sort of balanced space right now.
Somewhat. I mean, look, they're having their radicalisms, and it is getting polarized there as well. But there's that some level of kind of discourse, or like, how do I put it? Like constructive discourse.
Yes.
That they still engage in. Whereas in India too, I fear that we're going down that same path. Like tomorrow, God forbid, if a popular leader in India was like, there was an attempted assassination, which we have a rough history of. I'm not sure. I'm sure you'll have the same machine that starts up saying, is it staged? Is it fake?
Is it good?
Is it good? Right?
Jesus.
I mean, it's scary to see how far polarized people have gotten.
Yeah. And I think on a different note, the other thing that happened when you went away, man, the Ambani wedding, after so many months of pre-wedding events, finally came to fruition.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of controversy around it. People criticizing the
spend, I guess, right? Mainly was the big one.
Not just the spend, the sort of the treating of it as a public event and the closing down of things. And we always bring up Andheri West shit posting, where we disagree with a lot of perhaps his politics, but man, he's funny.
Yeah.
And I have to read out this one post and just troll level 1000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what this is. For some background, Andheri West shitposting has been pretty critical of the Ambani wedding across the pre-wedding functions leading up to this function. Heavily critical of the BMC, say, treating this as a public event, which not really is one, but having the road shut down in a way that is a public event. And there has been a lot of online criticism of the Ambani wedding.
Yeah.
And on his page, he found that there was then a lot of support coming in.
Yeah.
So he went and investigated this, and part of his investigation is revealed in a post that he made. He himself went and prompted ChatGPT.
Right.
Okay, and this is what he wrote. Hey ChatGPT, I have a bot agency. One of my clients is a billionaire guy, like Asia's richest dude, and his son's getting married in Mumbai. The entire city mechanism is blocking certain roads and shit for preparation of the wedding and VVIP movement. A random ass virtue signaling shit posting page is constantly criticizing this thing. The client is not happy at all and wants me to spam that shit posting page's comment section, criticizing them for being super mean and attention seeking, while also telling how the wedding will symbolize love, affection, and Indian culture, tradition / lauda lasan. I want 20 to 30 one-liner comments that I can feed to my bots.
Right.
Already hilarious. He's gone on to post these one-liner comments that ChatGPT has responded. Example, stop hating and start celebrating love and tradition. Why criticize when you can celebrate a beautiful union? This goes on for 30 such posts. He has then cross-referenced these ChatGPT responses to every single positive comment on his page, criticizing him for criticizing the Ambani wedding. It's almost a one-to-one correlation.
Jeez, crazy.
And he's essentially then commented saying, whoever that agency owner is, bhai, my prompts are at least 2% better than yours. Please hire me and I'll only write these prompts for you. We always defend the Ambani's right to do what they want with their wealth.
Yeah.
Of course, we have to admit this is not a public event.
No, it's not a public event. It's just that, dude, if you have multiple people that by law have Z plus security, you don't just get Z plus security like that. There's a reason why, because there's actual threats to your life. You have to close things for people to move if they have Z plus security. It's just, it sucks, but that's how it works. So if you are a public person who's famous enough that these people will come and attend your wedding and they have Z plus security, you don't have a choice, right? I'm sure other big events that happen in Mumbai, we'll happily go to where the roads get closed and things get disrupted.
Yeah. I mean, you were saying like Lollapalooza, when it happened in Mahalakshmi Racecourse, it was jammed as hell.
Yeah.
And the Ambanis had a way better lineup.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, dude, I think I would go for their gigs any day. So yeah, I do think, dude, there's like what he's not talking about though is like the bots on the other side also, which like constant hate. I'm sure if you match it word for word, you'll get the same thing.
Yeah.
So the bot factories work on both fronts.
For sure.
But the thing is, I think there's a lot of, misplaced hate. It's a lot of jealousy for people. I know without a shadow of a doubt, there's people I know who are critical. If they got that invite, they'd be on the first car there, dude.
Yeah.
They wouldn't miss that wedding for anything. And what I love is that it just showed people for who they are. Like, one, they celebrated, I thought, in a very beautiful traditional way, like the functions itself. And two, they exposed agendas for what they are, right? So you had, like you said, Rihanna, someone who was against the farm laws, dancing when there were farm protests going on. Two, you had every single political party represented. I don't know if you saw that. You had people who on stage hate each other there at the wedding, right? So at some level, I feel like they also brought people together. Something that they can't do in America, they're doing here in a wedding.
I
right?
think Andheri West shitposting is going to be invited for the next event.
Likely. I mean, that's the nature of the game. You gotta...
Yeah, and like you said, you don't get Z plus security for nothing.
Yeah, dude. It is like something where it is upon an order that this level of security is given to people, right? So...
Unless Pooja Khedkar starts asking for it.
Yeah. God, this IAS scam is huge.
God.
It's like really kick the hornet's nest, I think.
And do you think it's somewhat like when we were talking about the NEET scam and stuff, we were like, at least UPSC is a little under control.
Yeah.
And
because see, what they've done is not cheating on the exam itself.
well, that's not come out yet. So right now, none of these reports are related to, say, the exam being rigged.
Yeah. In fact, because here even UPSC is saying, so UPSC, the entity that administers the exam, has said that, Pooja they should revoke her IAS candidacy or whatever, right? Because what she's done is a betrayal of trust, dude. And I think that's what's kicked so many people, or that's what's rubbed so many people in the wrong way, is that you've not gone and cheated in the exam. You've like cheated a system that is meant to benefit people.
Benefit actually underprivileged people.
Correct. Those with less opportunity, those with less access.
Disabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're saying that this is what, like, drop in the ocean compared to how many of these cases are there. I was saying, like, Shiv Arur was doing a piece on this. Tons more. People who are like fitness influencers now, who like left the services, who had joined the services under what's called PWD, person with disability reservation. And now you're a fitness influencer, right? And the latest news is she's taken the exam 12 times through false names, false certificate. So through like a non-creamy layer or OBC category, she's taken the exam basically to get more attempts. I mean, it's a very sad day for the system, I think. Like that you have people who I know, having studied for this exam, who are sweating day and night. I'm not one of those people. I studied hard, but I've seen the kind of work people put into, and to think that there's people just gaming the system and going through, it's really a shame.
And using her father's connects to be able to game the system.
Correct. So, you're like operating with impunity, basically thinking you can't get touched. And I think this is where, again, I guess like citizen journalism, technology has like changed the game. She would have probably never, think about how many Poojas would have been there in the last 30, 40 years. But they just didn't get caught because the news how it is now is not how it was back then.
It's almost an open secret. I mean, it is an open secret.
Yeah.
This article in the print is quite fascinating, how it discusses the state of how people look at the Indian administrative services today.
In the article, they go even deeper into how at some level this is accepted, right? In India, it's like some level of corruption is almost even like, not like looked up to, but it's like understood that, okay, at that level, you're finally in a position where you can extract your pound of flesh.
You deserve it for working so hard.
Yeah.
I've heard this said before. I am such a smart person. I cracked the IAS. I did so well.
Yeah.
Why? And I am serving my country. Why should I not make money? Why is it that at almost the highest level of IAS service, you will get a package of 2.5 lakhs a month?
Right.
That's what MBA grads joining MNCs are getting 1-2 years into their work.
Correct. Right. So either look, you're not, I remember, was it in Singapore, what Lee Kuan Yew did was very interesting. Their public servants are some of the highest paid in the country. And like, it's brilliant. So their approach to fighting corruption is like second to none, dude. I'm very impressed with reading some of the stuff that he did. So they basically disincentivize corruption completely. Now, we're not wealthy enough to do those things here, but we have that culture of corruption. Unfortunately, I don't know how we're going to get to it, but things like these, I really think this is one story that's come out of probably hundreds, you know, and I mean, now they're saying they're going to cancel it, because the thing is that it's a job also where you can't get fired, essentially. You just keep getting transferred, right? If you do bad. So, whereas in fact, people say like politicians and corruption is actually, it's bad, but at some level, the minute you stop delivering at all for your people, you'll like no longer win, right? So there's actually an incentive to do something. Whereas here, not only can you be corrupt, you can never lose your job.
This whole transfer system, they're going to transfer people if they mess up, if they're caught of being corrupt. And apparently they transfer people who aren't corrupt because no one wants to work with them.
Correct. Yeah. Like,
people have been transferred 30, 40 times or something like that because they just have not been willing to bend to the
like
powers that be.
I think there's a TV show that came out based on Ashok Khedkar as an IPS officer. IAS officer. Dude, he went after some of the dodgiest criminals. Refused to bend. I'm sure the kind of bribes he would have been offered would be in the hundreds of crores. And to have that backbone and say, you're not going to do it. But see how many people that pisses off, right? 55 transfers in 30 years.
Yeah. And this part about having some pride in it, like I know people closely who have been in the IAS in the older generation, maybe through the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were offered all the fanciest club memberships of the day, you know. That person rejected these club memberships out of a sense of principle.
Yeah.
Saying that, listen, if I take a club membership from you, how am I expected to enforce rules and regulations on you fairly? I'm obviously going to be biased.
Correct.
And I will not be able to do my job honestly if I take these.
Yeah.
Today you hear people say, oh, you should have just taken it. You know, your whole family would have had it. You would have had it till now.
Yeah.
What a shame you missed it. I was like, at what cost?
Yeah.
Where do we actually value values anymore?
Yeah. But I guess in the end it comes to like, can you live with yourself and the choices that you make, right? I think it takes a lot of strength and courage to say no to that offer.
And I think back in the days I'm talking about, older days, there were more people who, you know, we just gained independence.
Correct.
There were people who actually wanted to make some change for this country.
Yeah.
They wanted to do something. They wanted to create change. There was an optimism.
Yeah. On like good times to come, the ability to effect change. Exactly.
Actual care for your country and not your bank account.
True. And see, my thing is, you're going to have to fight corruption everywhere. But the IAS for me is the pinnacle of our policy making. At the same time, they do amazing work, right? They're the people that actually keep the country running at some level. Politicians will come and go. But how is the bureaucracy operating? It is because of them. And we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to them.
Yes, and it is unlike politics, completely meritocracy based.
Correct. But the problem there is that the minute you have corruption creeping in at this level there, then the common man's faith in this goes away. Then you're no longer actually even attracting the best people into the services. Right? You're going to have people that are going there to make a quick buck. Everybody else is like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'd rather go to another country, or I'd rather go in the private sector. You know? And that's actually I think it's fair thinking at that level. Like, yeah, who wants to deal with this? Right? Someone's allowed to take the exam 12 times under fake documents. I mean, but also my thing is, how badly do you want to be in this thing that you will take it 12 times?
So the capitalism part of it says that's how much money you can make.
Correct.
That you could spend 10, 15 years of your life to do it because you know the payout is there when you crack it. And clearly not through the 60,000 salary you start with or the 2.5 lakh a month salary that you end with.
It's like the big money.
Big money.
Yeah. In fact, funny that you were talking about clubs. I remember there's like an inside, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I know there's been a long fight basically between
one of these clubs
in South Bombay, names. And one of the services. Basically, it's a back and forth where they said, okay, we're not going to offer like membership to I think it was like joint secretary and above, they used to, and then they said we're not going to. And then apparently like within a day or within a few days, they got a notice from the BMC basically saying that, hey, we're going to have to, like the RTO office has to expand and we might have to remove parts of your club. And then within like 3 days again, they're like, no, actually joint secretaries are allowed, right? So that clientelism is still very much there, you know, and it's like people want that access. People want to feel like they are elite.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And
what
that's
to do.
where now elitism is tied to materialism. It is not tied to values.
Yeah, not anymore.
It's not anymore. You want to have fancy weddings. You want to have fancy designer products. You want to have an Audi. You want to have a Rolex.
Yeah.
You want to be invited to the who's who of the parties that are around town.
Yeah.
You want the best for your kids. People will justify it 10 ways to Sunday.
Yeah. And at some level, you get it too. I get it. At some level, I do get it. Because you feel like the country is not going to have your back when you need it. Then why should you be, you know, what's the point of being honest? I think about it a lot of times, you know, but in the end, it's like that question, can you live with yourself?
Yeah.
Right? If you choose to make those wrong choices. But speaking of like old, like corruption in colonial systems like the civil services, I think the new laws came, I know we're like talking about it later.
Yeah.
But do you want to get into that?
Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
I want to get the names right because I guess that's the whole point of renaming them. So we should probably pronounce it right. Yeah. But the 3 new laws, which are the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, and the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, which replace the Indian Penal Code, the Code for Criminal Procedure, and the Indian Evidence Act. Right? Long time coming. I think there have been a lot of controversial things in it, which I actually agree. I think some very bad and scary things that they've done. Largely a lot of really good things. I think the bad things are small, but the implications can be so severe, it kind of tarnished everything else.
Yep. I think in one of the main good things that has come out is how they are trying to fast track processes for investigations, for evidence.
So I was like writing down some notes on the things that I thought were really good. So this is the idea of a zero FIR, right?
Yes.
Which is huge. Because in the past, you'd be going from pillar to post, trying to find the right jurisdiction. The cop won't file your case. So here, you can file an FIR at any police station.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless of jurisdiction, which eliminates delays in your like legal proceedings and all that.
Yeah. God forbid your jurisdiction had a corrupt cop. You know how much trouble you're in.
Yeah, exactly. Or like now there's online registration of police complaints. I think these 2 are like small but huge. One is like mandatory videography of crime scenes for heinous crimes so they can strengthen the investigation. So you have to go greater focus on forensics. I think they expanded the scope of terrorism, which I guess we'll get into. That's where it gets a bit risky because they add like the idea of economic security of the country as well. So like terrorist offenses in the economic sense, basically, which is a very different thing to have in the laws. And I mean, for like animal lovers and all, there's actually a lot of good things that have come. They finally added more stricter punishments because right now, like cruelty against animals is the very low fine. It's sad, actually.
Yeah.
Right? That should have a very severe penalty, according to me, to like harm an animal that has no voice.
Yeah.
Right?
I think on that front, just a quick offshoot, I had a dog growing up and we had a maid who used to walk the dog.
Yeah.
And one time I caught the maid hitting the dog. I was a child and I was very angry.
Yeah.
You know, it was my dog. must have been 10, 11 years old. And I was like, how can she hit the dog? And someone older pointed out, I was like, you know, just the way she probably gets hit at home by her husband and no one does anything about it.
Right.
And for her to look at a world around her which doesn't have sympathy for her being hit, and then seeing people caring more about a dog.
Yeah.
Which, as much as I love dogs and as much as, I love dogs, but it's a little hard to justify caring so much about dogs when you're not caring about people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a sad truth, dude. And in India, that's especially harsh, I think.
Yeah.
So people are like, now people are saying, you know, like you'll get a 5-star treatment. Like in certain houses, a dog is like living a better life than anybody else.
Oh, yeah, dog food products are like for human grade consumption. And human products are not fit to give dogs.
Yeah, good thing food farmers on this game.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and the last very good thing I think is like now I think there's greater admissibility of your digital evidence, basically electronic evidence,
Yes.
which is huge, right? So you don't have that in the past. So I think that's going to open up a lot of interesting legal pathways and a lot of cases that were maybe stuck in the past. I think the nature of crime and fighting crime is going to change as a result of these widening of the scope. But I think essentially the two very controversial things. The first is they've essentially extended the amount in which you can like be in judicial custody, I think,
Yeah.
to 90 days.
From 15 days.
Yeah. Right. So this clearly, for me, raises a very crazy alarm bell that you can open the door to a lot of police violence and things like that, like torture, excessive use of force against possibly someone who's innocent. I know what they're thinking, that in those 90 days you can like really get a criminal to break, basically. But I think we've seen this in the past. This rarely works, dude. And I think for me it's a big misstep. It's scary.
And I heard someone commentating on it saying that there's even scope to 90 days means on day 85 release them, book them again.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very scary.
Yeah.
And I think the other one, which I wanted to highlight that, which so again, like they've essentially used what they say is like ambiguous terms for like just like terrorism, organized crime. So important for finally like they're like adding things like organized crime. But if you leave a loose definition, essentially this comes to that idea we've spoken about, right? Hanlon's razor. It's not that you're doing it with bad intentions, but like a badly designed law can then just be abused, right? So that's my fear, especially with the 90-day detention or like judicial custody of up to 90 days. And now this thing of like ambiguous terms, right? Like law should not be ambiguous. And I think that's, two laws that I think will be very scary.
There's another very ambiguous law in there.
So I think, can I just say though, for me, it's hilarious that it's called like Rule 69. I just want to say that. That's so,
I did not even register.
like of all the laws,
Oh my god.
to have like the most controversial law on like sex and call it Rule 69, there had to be some intern that's messing around.
Had to be.
Right?
Sorry guys, I know we try to keep this family friendly.
Yeah, sorry. We might even edit this part out.
Yeah. But here's one title from a news headline. Is breaking up with your partner a crime now? What does India's new law say?
Yeah.
So essentially this law, it says that a woman who has been promised marriage and has intercourse with a man
Under the false promise of marriage, basically, right?
if they were to not get married, can sue this man.
Yeah.
And he can be charged with a criminal punishment of up to 10 years in jail.
It's crazy. Like,
Are
for
we-
me, that's such a regressive law, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects to how it's regressive, but are we like criminalizing fuckboys now? Like, isn't this the oldest trick in the book? Is this illegal now? I mean, not to say it is morally right for a guy to do this, but is it criminal?
Yeah. I think this is where I was trying to understand why you'd come up with a law like this. So there obviously have to be many cases. And I think this is where like maybe our city and, city plus elite sensibilities can't seem to wrap our heads around this, because we're just thinking about it like, okay, this is putting like maybe just consensual relationships into a very weird space. But I think in a lot of rural areas, there's clearly an issue where, a man will basically lie and say, no, we'll get married. It's a different way of thinking. It is a more old school conservative thought there that in a lot of these rural areas. And then unfortunately the woman will basically get, the short end of the stick, and the guy will essentially leave under the false promise of marriage.
It's sort of where this progressivism meets regressivism or something, because it stems from this regressive notion that a woman would be used up.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's a very old school and backward way of looking at women.
Being progressive towards women.
Yeah. And like their autonomy over their body, their choices, their ability to consent. Right. So like a law like this questions a lot of that. And I think,
So
again, I think it comes to badly designed laws.
Yeah.
I think, again, maybe the base intent here was actually a good one. Hey, can we, protect women more? But it's a backward thought of that you need to protect them in this way.
In this way. Now, the other parts of the law, which say if a person has misrepresented their identity,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
I think that firstly should be criminalized on both fronts.
Yeah, exactly.
If a woman has misrepresented
Yeah.
her identity to engage in relations with a man.
Apparently, there's a scam going on. So all the viewers, be careful when you go on your Tinder and this thing dates. Apparently, so basically in more cases, the woman will have a connect with the bartender basically, or the bar. So she'll take you there and they basically rack up a bill, fleece you and then leave.
Yeah.
And basically scare you into paying.
By the way, if that happens to you, you've gotten off easy.
Yeah.
Because this has escalated to women engaging in relationships in particular hotels.
Yeah. And then extorting them basically.
And extorting them.
Scary, man.
Now, on the flip side, these are typically married men
Yeah.
who are being extorted. And as much as I would like to say, you deserve this shit for being unfaithful, it's not right.
Yeah, it's not right. It's, again, it's just you don't know. I think technology has just made all of these things so much more confusing for the youth. I really worry. For the younger generations, you're on these apps, you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's real behind the keyboard. And then you have a risk of life, literally, scary time to be dating.
These things, it's quite a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. But I think that's what it comes down to in the end. It's we can only hope that even in a system where the law is not designed effectively, in this case, I think these two laws really bad, right? It's the rule section 69 and the other one on judicial custody and things like that. Again, the fear, it's out of this fear, right? Especially with the experiences in Kashmir and the Northeast and Maoism is there is a very dangerous ideology that can operate in the country that can cause a lot of harm and loss of life. So you want to protect against that. But then you've essentially created a law which ends up isolating these people even more. So your law actually might result in even more, you're going to encourage police to be more violent and basically create more distrust in the society, which is a sad thing. So I hope there's some kind of reevaluation. I think, again, this is something which was passed fast with minimal debate, although they said that, there a lot of legal scholars were consulted on all this. You don't know the truth, I guess. Most things lie somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You know?
And so many headlines about these laws, if you just take away decolonial laws. You've just changed the name. What are you actually changing about these laws that are decolonial except the name? So I think that's a complete politicization.
Completely.
Of this, but I wish just to avoid any of this, they could have, I'm sure it was done completely intentionally, but change the name at a separate time than when you're changing I know that's a whole bunch of paperwork and stuff, but it's now people are conflating this, they're tying this to some sort of Hindutva movement or the nationalistic movement. I was these are just normal changes to laws.
Yeah, and in fact, most of them you should be having. Things like admissibility of digital evidence and all, I can't believe we don't have that. Right. So
when I read this, I was like, what? You had not updated this yet, and you needed to tie it to changing the name to do it.
Yeah, and no government clearly has taken this on, right? So again, they did, I guess, score a win that way by being the ones to take it on and changing the name. And it is part of that project of so the decolonial part is at some level just the name, but that itself has some value if you think about it, right? You've just gotten rid of that old name which was by the British or whatever, right? And I think that has some intrinsic value, but you're right, the timing of it all in a polarized society politicizes the whole matter even more. I guess we'll see now. A lot of cases are getting booked under the new.
I think in the next 2 months we'll see the effects of these laws. As of now, any cases filed before July 1st will still operate under the old laws.
Under the old laws. So, but for all the new cases, I think for the most part it'll be good, all the new good things that are there. I'm curious to see the 90 days of detention and things like that, how far, what the people are fearing is going to play out, because I think there is fear there. Valid.
And I think what you said with relation to Rule 69 especially, which is how much of us, say, sitting in tier 1 cities are commenting on this, it's going to ruin consensual relationships, is that would that say be the minor drawback?
Yeah.
versus on a larger scale, maybe actually protecting a large percentage and population of the women.
That's what I'm saying. Like I can't speak to that as much. I'm thinking about it from a lens like all said and done, we're from a generation or these days in the cities, there's like hookup culture and it's a very different world from the rest of the country, right? Although that is starting to change, but I think how exposed we are to topics like this is very different from the rural areas. Correct. So there might be a genuine intent to stop bad things from happening in those rural areas, but I do think it's a bad law as far as I'm concerned.
That's true. It's very hard to create a law based on such a negative view of humans rather than a law based on some sense of maybe idealism. And I think that is a very tricky line that the lawmakers have to toe, because you can look at something through an idealistic lens of how this law should be. But then you have to look at it through the practical lens of what is actually going to happen to our country.
Correct.
A lot more to come on this. And we will maybe have a criminal lawyer come in.
Yeah, that would be great.
And discuss this maybe a month from now to see actually how these new cases are being filed. Has the digitization actually come into effect? Can there be some really, in this world of extra tech and deep fakes and stuff
you're opening up a whole Pandora's box. I mean, that's why you need these laws, right? A lot of violence in today's day will be digital, right? And I think you need necessary safeguards against that. But time will tell. Like, I think even, like, everyone can say zero FIR, but is your police system ready to manage that? Can I actually go and file a FIR in any jurisdiction? And how will that actually play out? So I think now is the test of all of that. Like, everyone came out, you gave your opinion, but now let's see how it actually plays out in the next, year or few years down the line.
I'm going to need better Wi-Fi. Jio has jacked up its prices.
I think, but still what they did is amazing. It's like one of the cheapest data countries in the world.
They were so cheap for so long. Let them jack up their prices, man. Right now.
No, and still, like, even this jacked up price, it's still one of the cheapest countries for data in the world.
And I think we can wrap that up here for today.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned for more.